Reggio Dolphins. Welcome back to another installment of the Westing game. Last week we read chapters 17 and 18. Today we're going to be reading chapters 19 and 20. Let's start with our review. Chapters 17 and 18, we had two vocabulary words. They were cull and burly. Cull is a verb and it means select from a large quantity, obtain from a variety of sources. And burly is an adjective and it means of a person large and strong, heavy built. If you need to pause, you can pause so you can copy that down. Next, we had two activities for you to do. The first was, who do you think was chosen by mistake? Explain your reasoning. Based off of the clues that Judge Ford and Sandy McSuthers kind of compile, we believe that Sidel Pulaski is the mistake because as of right now, Sidel has no direct link to Sam Westing. It's unusual that she's even here. We can't find a connection. Everybody else has some level of a connection to Sam Westing but her. The second, your answers are going to vary for this one, but this was to choose one of the characters. You could choose whichever character you liked the best or wanted to do, and you were to write 5 positive attributes. That would be 5 positive characteristics or character traits, things that make that person a good person, and then 5 negative attributes or 5 negative character traits, things that maybe hold that person back or maybe character flaws. And then last, we were adding to our clue cards. So in our clue cards, I did add some more. The first one here is for Madame Sun Lin Hu. Jake Wexler is teaching her English. This is showing in the partnership between Jake and Madame that they are actually getting closer and he is trying to support her with her English. Turtle Wexler, we add an additional one. She sells stocks to invest in WPP. That stands for the Westing Paper Product Company. So if you remember, she was losing a lot in her stocks, but then felt like she understood the clues to say to sell everything to invest in WPP, which actually turns out to benefit them because if you remember, the stocks end up starting to skyrocket. A couple more things about Flora Baumbach. Husband left her and does not send any money. And she gives Theo a clue, mountain. Not quite sure why she does that. I think she decides because she thinks maybe it would be fair to do that. We added another clue about D. Denton Deer. It's weird. It's hard to know what his motives are. If they're pure because, in fact, he is a doctor and wants to help people, or if, in fact, he has alternative motives. But he does want to help Chris with medication to help with his nerve disorder, which is kind of strange that he's like convincing him to come to the hospital and says he has parent consent, but parents are nowhere around. Chris is uncertain and he's wanting to get him there so maybe he could try this new medication to help with his nerve disorder. A lot of what happens in these last 2 chapters were gathered through Sandy McSuthers' notes. So I wanted to note here that he's been taking notes on each of the heirs. I also thought it was equally important about J.J. Ford, the judge, that she hired a private investigator. We don't know who this private investigator is. That's still a mystery, but to help solve the mystery of who did it. So the private investigator is gathering the information, and then Sandy McSuthers is building his profiles for each of the people from that information. We wanted to add a couple more about Grace Winsler Wexler. She's been helping Mr. Hu in his restaurant. Again, not sure if she's just being kind and feeling like she wants to be helpful or if there's an ulterior motive there because she wants to win. And she thinks Ed Plum, the lawyer, is the murderer because of the purple fruited plains or the purple fruited waves. She feels like that purple fruited is a hint that maybe it's Ed Plum. And then we learned from James Shin Hu that his first wife died of cancer. probably our biggest mystery character right now is Crow, Bertha Erica Crow. But we do find out that she tells Theo to take his angel away. Angel could be part of the word Angela. We know that she's already dropped a clue for Angela, referred to her as blessed or blessed. So again, that connection continues. And besides Otis Amber having a limp, we also added here that he's the deliverer of messages for the lawyer Ed Plum. So far, there's been 2 deliveries, and he's been the deliverer both times. Theo Theodorakis, we had lots of clues, didn't we? Thinks that Otis Amber is the murderer. And that's because as he was reading the clues, he thought solution meant to actually look at the clues as though they were a chemistry formula. And he thought he was able to decipher Otis Amber as the murderer. And then Doug Hu, who's the famous track star here, he runs all over town trying to track Otis Amber, thinking that Otis Amber may be the murderer, hoping to find a clue. Instead, we just realize he's like picking up all the messages and delivering all the messages to everybody. And then, of course, we added that Sidel Pulaski has no actual connection to the Westings. She is the mistake. And that is it as far as our additions to our notes. Okay, so moving on to chapter 19 and 20. So our vocabulary words for these 2 chapters are horrendous and loathe. Again, you may want to pause the video so you can write this down. I'd like you to compare and contrast 2 characters today. So as we're reading about the characters, think about 2 of the characters. It could be a partner pair. It could be 2 different characters that aren't partners. You get to decide. There are 16 characters to choose from here. And I want you to say how they are similar and how they are different from each other. Think of the way they behave, their mannerisms, their social status, meaning if they have a lot of wealth or not. The way they treat other people, maybe even their perspective on who did it or who was the murderer. All of those things can help you as you're building the profile of these 2 characters to determine what are the things that they have in common and what are the things that are different. And then the second one here is who's related to each other and why is this unusual? So as we read chapter 19, we're going to hear about odd relatives. We're going to hear about a connection that we didn't necessarily know before. And I want you to, 1, identify who those people are that are potentially related and why is that considered unusual. And then, of course, we're going to continue to fill out our clue cards. Okay, let's begin. Chapter 19, Odd Relatives. Thursday was a sunny day, a glorious day. The autumn air was crisp and clear. None of the airs noticed. WPP crossed the tape at $44, $44.50, $46, $46 a share. Oh my! Don't tell until I give the word, Baba, Alice Turtle had said. Baba, the dressmaker smiled at her new name and eased back in the chair, but not for long. WPP 48 and a quarter. Oh my, Flora Baumbach bit her thumbnail to the quick. If only the child was here. The child was being examined by the school nurse, having been caught again with a radio plugged in her ear. Turtle blamed her misbehavior on a toothache. The only thing that soothes the horrendous pain is listening to music. Notice our first vocab word there, horrendous pain. You should see a dentist, the nurse said. I have an appointment next week, Turtle lied. Can I go home now? The pain is truly unbearable. No, the nurse packed the tooth with foul-tasting cotton and sent her back to class. So every half hour, Turtle had to ask permission to go to the laboratory in order to keep up with the latest stock market reports. Bladder infection, she explained. Crow polished Mrs. Wexler's silver teapot with a Westing disposable diaper for the 3rd time. 2 more days, the day after next. It was too painful going back to that house. But Otis said she must, to collect her due. It was her penance to go back, not her due. Blessed is he who expects nothing. Boom! Just a warning to keep doors locked, the delivery boy said, dumping a carton of Westing paper products on the kitchen floor. You know, Crow, old pal, I think I figured out who the bomber is. Crow stiffened as she stared at her distorted reflection in the shining silver. Who? That's right, Otis, Amber said. James Shin Hu. He wanted to put the coffee shop out of business, right? Then he had to bomb his own restaurant so nobody would suspect him, right? And he catered the Wexler party. Nobody would notice if the caterer brought in an extra box along with the food, right? James Shin Hu was the bomber. Crow's hands trembled, her face blotched with hate. That beautiful, innocent angel reborn. Sandy said her face will be scarred for life. James Shin Hu, beware, vengeance shall be mine. The judge rearranged her docket in order to have these last days free. Leave it to Sam Westing to interfere with her work. Sandy turned to his next entry. It's an interesting one. Crow. Bertha Erica Crow, age 57. Mother died at childbirth, raised by father, deceased. Education, 1 year of high school. Married at 16, divorced at 40. Ex-husband's name, Windy Winclopple. Hospital records, problems related to chronic alcoholism. Police record, 3 arrests for vagrancy. Gave up drinking when she took up religion. Started the Good Salvation Soup Kitchen on Skid Row. Works as cleaning woman in Sunset Towers. Lives in maid's apartment on the 4th floor. Westing connection? ? Yes, it is interesting, Judge Ford replied, but it hardly tells us what we want to know. Notice there that there is a similar last name, Winclopple. Winclopple is a very unusual last name, but she married a Windy Winclopple, and we know that Grace Wexler's maiden name is Winclopple. You've got a customer, Jake Wexler pointed at a spare rib at the black-clad figure standing at the restaurant door. Must be a bill collector, Hu said, frowning over his account book. Grace looked up, saw it was only the cleaning woman, and returned to the sports photographs she was sorting. A dozen or more superstars would be framed and hung on one wall of Who's on First. Come on over and join us, Jake shouted. Limping to their table, Crow heard Mrs. Wexler click her tongue. Sinful woman, she'll go to hell with her pride and her covetousness, and take that foot butcher of her husband with her. And that one, the fat one, the glutton, the bomber, the mutilator of innocent children. Maybe she is a customer, Hu thought, recognizing the face clenched in righteous anger as that of a diner not being served fast enough. He rose and pulled out a chair for Crow. My wife will be serving a Chinese tea lunch shortly. Madame Hu placed a variety of dumplings on the table, giggled at Jake, and ran back to the kitchen. That tittering Madame Hu was a beautiful woman and quite young. Grace, casting a suspicious eye on her husband, was suddenly seized by a surge of gnawing jealousy. Maybe it was just the fried dumpling. Madame Hu returned to pour the tea. Jake patted her hand. Good, Grace noticed. She's clutching her stomach. About time she felt jealous. The podiatrist turned his smile to Crow. Nothing wrong with your appetite, I'm happy to see. Nothing is wrong with my mouth, the cleaning woman replied, looking down at her plate. It's my feet that hurt. That corn you cut out didn't heal yet. I got a callus on the sole of my left foot, and my ingrown toenail is growing in again. Grace clasped a hand over her mouth and ran out of the restaurant. Mr. Hu headed for the kitchen. Your trouble comes from years of wearing the wrong kind of shoes, Jake lectured. Crow wasn't listening. James Shin Hu, the bomber, was coming back. He had something in his hand. Here, Crow, try these. I invented them myself. Paper inner soles. They'll make you feel like you're floating on air. It's tough standing on your feet all day. Here, take them. Crow examined the 2 pads of spongy folded paper. How much? Nothing. Compliments of the house. Still suspicious, Crow slipped the inner soles into her shoes and tried walking. What a blessed relief! Otis Amber was wrong. James Shin Hu was a charitable man. He couldn't be the bomber. Crow floated out of the restaurant without paying for her lunch. Oh, no, not another victim, Sidel Pulaski cried, stuffing her notes under the mattress. The nurse wheeled Chris next to Angela's bed and explained that the boy was being tested for a new medication. Are you all right? She asked, bending over the squirming patient. Chris was trying to remove a blanket, sealed envelope from his bathrobe pocket. He knew his brother had a crush on Angela. He figured Theo must have sneaked upstairs in the wrong bathrobe to slip this letter under Angela's door, then remembered she was in the hospital and was too shy to give it to her in person. Look at that smile, Siddell exclaimed. From Theo, he said. Chris hoped to watch Angela read the love letter, but the nurse insisted he return to his room. Bye-bye, good luck, Siddell called. Angela waved a bandaged hand. Mount 10, Chris replied. From Turtle. Serves her right for kicking his partner. Mountain, Angela thought. Turtle's MT stood for mountain, not empty. And the letter was not from Theo. Your love has two. Here are two for you. Take her away from this sin and hate now before it is too late. Again, two clues were taped at the bottom. With majesties. Crow and Otis Amber's clues are not king and queen, she told Siddell. They are with thy beautiful majesties. Sandy and the judge were still at work on the heirs. Wexler. Jake Wexler, age 45, podiatrist, graduated from Marquette, married 22 years, has 2 daughters, see below. Grace Windsor Wexler, born Gracie Winkloppel, age 42, married to above. Claims to be an interior decorator, spends most of her time in the Chinese restaurant or the beauty parlor. She and Jake, see above, have 2 daughters, see below. Angela Wexler, age 20, engaged to marry D. Denton Deere, also an heir. 1-year college, high grades, victim of 3rd bombing, embroiders a lot. Turtle Wexler, real name Tabitha Ruth Wexler, age 13, junior high school student, plays the stock market, smart kid but kicks people. Flora Baumbach calls her Alice. Westing connection? Grace Windsor Wexler claims that Sam Westing is her real uncle. Angela looks like Violet Westing, so does Grace in a way, except she's older. Sandy fidgeted with his pen. There's something I didn't write down. Maybe I shouldn't tell you, you being a judge and all, but well, Jake Wexler, he's a bookie. No, he should not have told her. A small-time operator, I'm sure, Mr. McSuthers, the judge replied coldly. It can have no bearing on the matter before us. Sam Westing manipulated people, cheated workers, bribed officials, stole ideas, but Sam Westing never smoked or drank or placed a bet. Give me a bookie any day over such a fine, upstanding, clean-living man. The doorman's face reddened. He pulled at the dented flask from his hip pocket and downed several swigs. She had been too harsh. Would you like me to fix you a drink, Mr. McSuthers? No thanks, Judge. I prefer my good old Scotch. Winkloppel. The judge's outburst was so unexpected. Sandy had a hard time keeping down the last swig. Grace Wexler's maiden name is not Windsor, it's Winkloppel. The judge exclaimed, riffling through the pages of Sandy's notebook. Here it is, Bertha Erica Crow, ex-husband's name, Wendy Winkloppel. Sandy stopped coughing, started laughing. Grace Windsor Wexler is related to somebody, all right. She's related to the cleaning woman. Think she knows, Judge? I doubt it. Besides, we cannot be certain of the relationship. I'd like to see the documents in Crow's folder again. I'm sure it's Winkloppel, Judge. I checked all my spellings 3 times over. Judge Ford reread the private investigator's reports. Mr. McSuthers, it is Winkloppel, but look carefully at the name of the woman in this interview. Bertha Erica Crow. Sure, I knew her. She and her pa lived in the upstairs flat. We were best friends, almost like sisters, but she was the pretty one with her beautiful complexion and long gold red hair. She left school to marry a guy named Winkloppel. Haven't seen her or heard from her since. She's not in any trouble, is she? Transcript of a taped interview with Sybil Pulaski, November 12th. Pulaski, the doorman said. Not just Pulaski, the judge pointed out. Sybil Pulaski. Sam Westing wanted Crow's childhood friend, Sybil Pulaski, to be one of his heirs. He got Siddell Pulaski instead. Gee, Judge, I never noticed that. Boy, am I dumb, but what does it mean? What it means, Mr. McSuthers, is that Sam Westing made his first mistake. So we get the clarity here, as we had predicted, that Sidel Pulaski was the mistake. That letter was supposed to go to Sybil Pulaski, friends of Grace Windsor, or also now known as Winkloppel. All right, chapter 20, Confessions. Friday came quickly to the Westing heirs. Too quickly, time was running out. Turtle skipped school. She was in trouble enough, but she could build her own school and hire her own kind of teachers once she became a millionaire. In spite of having Turtle at her side, Flora Baumbach still stared at the ever-changing, endless tape of the edge of the chair, chewed what remained of her fingernails, and uttered an "oh my" each time WPP went by. At 2 o'clock, Westing Paper Products sold at $52 a share, its highest price in 15 years. Now, Baba, sell! Doug Hu had a legitimate excuse from classes. Tomorrow was the big track meet. He jogged, he sprinted, he ran at full speed, not on the track, but on the trail of Otis Amber. Back and forth from the shopping center to Sunset Towers, again and again and again, and, hey, this is a new direction. Otis Amber parked his delivery bike in front of a rooming house and went inside. Doug waited, hidden in a doorway across the street, and waited. People came and went, but no Otis Amber. Doug jogged up and down the block for 2 hours, still no sign of Otis Amber. Doug was cold and hungry, but at least his feet didn't hurt anymore. Last night, when he asked Doc Wexler about the blisters, the podiatrist told him to see his father. His father, of all people. But those paper innersoles really worked. At 5 o'clock, Otis Amber skipped out of the rooming house, hopped on his bicycle, and returned to Sunset Towers empty-handed. Doug's assignment was over. Well, almost over. Where was Theo? Theo was being patched up in the hospital emergency room after a slight miscalculation in his solution experiment. Fortunately, no one else was around when the lab blew up. "You like playing with explosives, kid?" the bomb squad detective asked. Accidents in high school chemistry were not unusual, but this student lived in Sunset Towers. "I was experimenting on chemical fertilizers," Theo replied, wincing as the doctor probed his shoulder for a glass shard. "The first bomb went off in your folks' coffee shop, right? Your mother and father work you pretty hard, don't they?" "They work harder than I do. Why all of the questions? Your captain said the Sunset Towers explosions were just fireworks." "Sure they were, but bombers have a funny habit of going in for bigger and bigger bangs until they get caught." Theo had an alibi. He was nowhere near the Wexler apartment the day the third bomb went off. The detective grunted a warning about careless chemistry, but Theo had already learned his lesson. Ouch. At last, the coffee shop owner himself delivered the up order. The judge came right to the point. "Mr. Theodorakis, tell me about your relationship with Violet Westing. I have reason to believe a life is in danger, or I would not ask." It was a question he had expected. "I grew up in Westingtown, where my father was a factory foreman. Violet Westing and I were, childhood sweethearts. We planned to get married someday, when I could afford it, but her mother broke us up. She wanted Violet to marry somebody important." The judge had to interrupt. "Her mother? Are you saying it was Mrs. Westing who arranged the marriage, not Sam Westing?" George Theodorakis nodded. "That's right. Sam Westing tried to involve Violet in his business. I guess he hoped she'd take it over the paper company one day, but she had her heart set on being a teacher. Besides, Violet didn't have much of a business sense. After that, her father never paid her much attention." "Go on." The judge held the witness in her stare. The subject was becoming painful, and Mr. Theodorakis faltered several times in the telling. "Mrs. Westing handpicked the politician, probably figured the guy would end up in the White House and her daughter would be the first lady. But Violet thought he was nothing but a cheap political hack, a cheap crook. Violet was a gentle person, an only child. She couldn't turn against her mother. She couldn't face marrying that guy. I guess she couldn't find any way out except... Mrs. Westing sort of went off her rocker after Violet's death, and it was a long time ago." "Thank you, Mr. Theodorakis," the judge said, ending the interrogation. The man had a different life now, different loves, different problems. "Thank you. You have been a big help." Sandy was now able to complete the entry. Theo Theodorakis, age 17, high school senior, works in family coffee shop, wants to be a writer, seems lonely, can't find anyone to play chess with. Christos Theodorakis, age 15, younger brother of above, confined to a wheelchair, disease struck about 4 years ago, knows a lot about birds. Westing connection? Father was childhood sweetheart of Sam Westing's daughter, who looked like Angela Wexler. Mrs. Westing broke up the affair. She wanted daughter to marry somebody else, but Violet Westing killed herself before the wedding. Neither parents of above are heirs. I hear the new medicine they're trying out on Chris is doing some good, Sandy reported. But the poor kid needs more help than medicine. He's real smart, you know. Chris could have had a real future, be a scientist or a professor even, but it will take a pile of money, more money than his folks could ever make, to put him through college with a handicap like that. The parents interest me more, the judge said. Why are they not the heirs? Sandy had some thought on that too. Maybe Sam Westing didn't want to embarrass George Theodorakis, him being married and all. Or maybe Westing figured he'd be too busy with his coffee shop to stay in the game. Or maybe Westing blamed him for his daughter's death, figuring they should have eloped. No, if Sam Westing blamed Mr. Theodorakis, he would have made him an heir in this miserable game, the judge replied. There are too many maybes here, which is what Sam Westing planned. We must not allow ourselves to be distracted from the real issue. Which heir did Sam Westing want to punish? The person who hurt him most, Sandy guessed. And who would that be? The person who caused his daughter's death. Exactly, Mr. McSuthers. Sam Westing plotted against the person he held responsible for his daughter's suicide, the person who forced Violet Westing to marry a man she loathed. Mrs. Westing? But that's not possible, Judge. Mrs. Westing is not one of the heirs. I think she is, Mr. McSuthers. The former wife of Sam Westing must be one of the heirs. Mrs. Westing is the answer, and whoever she is the one we have to protect. Okay, stopping there. Curious. So I think we have figured out who is related to each other and why is that an unusual pairing. Think about the last name connection. Again, you're going to be comparing and contrasting two characters. You can choose a partner pair or any of the other two characters, and then we're answering our two questions. Don't forget to fill out your clue cards. What I think is really important here that was mentioned by Judge Ford is that the person that Sam Westing is trying to punish, the person who he believes caused his demise, who is not being true about who they are supposed to be, is Mrs. Westing, his ex, the wife that he blames for the death of his daughter. Our job now is to look at all 16 of these people. Who do you think possibly could be Sam Westing's ex-wife? Think closely, go back to those clues. Maybe some of the answers for the questions I'm asking of you may help. All right, until next time, have a great rest of the day. Bye, Dolphins.